on the topic of BIMSTEC countries and climate change, imperatives and initiatives. For that, I would like to invite onto the stage the chair, Professor Jayanto Bandyopadhyay, the visiting Distinguished Fellow of Observer Research Foundation, Kolkata. I would also like to invite the speakers, Mr. Sanjay Wangdi, researcher, Center for Bhutan and GNH Studies, Dr. Yogesh Gokhale, Senior Fellow and Area Convener, Center for Forest Management and Governance, Land Resources Division at the TERI Institute, Professor S.M. Shamim Reza, Department of Mass Communication and Journalism at the University of Dhaka, and Dr. Rajdeep Roy, Member of Parliament, Lok Sabha. I would also like to may request Mr. Krishnendu from the ISCS to please felicitate the chair as well as the speakers. May I please request the chair to please chair the session. Thank you.
Distinguished members on the dais, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. After two sessions where we had talked of growth through connectivity and the excellent example of overcoming food insecurity and converting the situation to a situation of food security. We now have a session on impact of climate change, which is very complex, which is related to both the issue of food security and insecurity, as well as the issue of the rapid economic growth that we projected through the increasing connectivity of the region. Global climate change is a result of global warming, and we all know that this is a problem we have identified maybe even in 1980, but we have not succeeded very much even today to address it completely. There are very partial small scale responses, but we on the whole think that the issue of climate change is not under our control. This is justified. This is taken from the last, in the last 1 week, there was this report of the assessment report number 6, the synthesis report of that AR6, which gave us a challenging and I would say also threatening situation that we all are facing and will increasingly face in the years to come and decades to come. And the BIMSTEC region is not an exception. It has its very serious problems associated with climate change. Now, we have a very interesting region. This region has a very large coastal area, and it probably has the first or second largest cryospheric entity, which is the Himalayan crest line, which starts from the Indian border of Himachal Pradesh or Jammu Kashmir, goes up to tail ends in Myanmar, and it is supposed to be known as the water tower. 32 years back, when some of us were writing to promote the inclusion of a chapter on the mountains in Agenda 21 related to the Rio Earth Summit 92, the slogan was floated, "Mountains are the water tower of humanity." As situation has changed, 2 days back, in a side event of the World Water Conference in New York that was organized by the Global Mountain Partnership, a colleague told me, "Why do you mention water tower? There is no water in the tower." Because increasingly we are losing water in the tower. And this is, in one single sentence, that participant in the Global Mountain Partnership side event summarized the whole issue of the climate change challenge. And this is particularly true in the case of BIMSTEC countries. Now, we have the crest line, which is the cryosphere. We have the very large coastline, but we also have in between extremely large areas of land use, land cover. And I refer to the 3 special reports of the AR6, which are very relevant for BIMSTEC. The first report is on oceans and cryosphere. The second report is on land and land cover. And the third report, which is not related to specifically impacts, but the challenges associated with the 1.5 degree warming, or limiting warming within 1.5 degrees. And all these 3 are very significant for our area. For example, if we have the coastlines, there is definitely going to be a sea level rise, substantial sea level rise, which will submerge the long coastal area. Even if it submerges small width areas, it is going to be large submersion. And we have to really see it helplessly, because the whole issue of sea level rise is related to global warming, the warming of the sea, as well as melting of the ice cover where the water finally comes onto the sea. But for this region, it is more important and probably more devastating to watch the increasing instances of high-intensity cyclones. So we have the water tower having less and less water. We have the cyclones having more and more intensity. And in between, we have the issue of the destabilized water cycle, floods and droughts, affecting agriculture and food insecurity. I would not say food security, but I would say promoting food insecurity. So in that background, where our distinguished panelists are going to add much more to the specific ones, I would say that they take about 15 minutes. We are already quite a bit late. Four of the distinguished speakers may take 15 minutes each, and then we go for a question and answer session. We have with us Mr. Sange Wangdi. We have Dr. Yogesh Gokhale. We have Professor Shamin Reza and Dr. Rajdeep Roy, Honorable Member of Parliament of India. May I now invite Mr. Sange Wangdi to make his presentation.
Mr. Chair, dignitaries, participants, co-panelists, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sange Wangdi. I would like to present on BMC countries and climate change. My presentation outlined, I would firstly, as an introduction, would like to touch something on, like me being from Bhutan, would like to touch on reality of climate change in Bhutan. Then I would like to go to present on climate change in BMC countries, basically phenomenon and the impacts of climate change, and finally on some actions towards this climate change. But I would like to caution that I have nothing new discoveries and great revelations to present. Rather, is a bit of a reminder of what has actually already been known to all of you. As I sit comfortably in this air-conditioned room, I almost forgot how hot it is outside. So in this way, I think like as a first steps towards climate change, I think first initiative is rather being constantly reminded of the reality of climate change to prompt an action. So in this way, I would like to justify my presentation of rather reminding you of some facts and figures and also some points which were already known to you. So as an introduction, in Bhutan, the constitution mandates us to have 60% of our land under forest cover for all times to come. And at the moment, we are way beyond our constitution mandate. We have more than 70% of our land under forest cover. And Bhutan has committed in COP15 in 2009 to remain carbon neutral to all time to come, and at the moment we are we are more of a carbon negative country. We have potential to sequester around 6.3 million tons of carbon dioxide against our 23 annual estimated emission of just 2.2 metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent. However, nevertheless, how much our effort was, we still face climate change issues and its consequences. Rainfall and temperature are said to be the main climatic variables in context of climate change. So that's why I would like to present you a rainfall temperature in Bhutan for over past 8-9 years, collected from around 8 different stations. But looking at this pattern, I think I can say nothing. I say nothing in the sense I cannot use this pattern to advise certain pattern to our farmers because the rainfall has been so erratic or rather very much variable. So I think this is also a consequences or rather an indication of climate change. And the next thing I have is the mean absolute temperature, the minimum and the maximum for over the period of years. For that too, the mean minimum temperature has been reducing as you see in the trend line, but the mean maximum temperature has also been increasing, meaning like we have the cold days has been becoming colder and then hot days has been becoming hotter. So this is an evidence of climate change in Bhutan as well. And for the CO2 equivalent emission scenario in Bhutan, as I said earlier, we at the moment remains as a carbon negative country, but if we continue as business as usual, and if we seek to further increase our economic growth, this is going to be the condition of CO2 emission in Bhutan. A significant rise in every sector. I think I need not point each of it is for you to see. And then here, the main point is like, if we continue in business as usual scenario, our CO2 equivalent emission is going to far exceed our sequestering capacity by 2040. Only in GNH state, where we will have to, GNH state and knowledge-based state, where we will have to take various of initiatives and many compromises, will we be able to remain remain our emission below our sink capacity. But if we look for further economic growth and continue business as usual, I think Bhutan will have no boasting statement to say like we are carbon negative, but we will have to make many sacrifices and initiatives. So now with this, I'm going to present on BIMSTEC, climate change in BIMSTEC countries. See, BIMSTEC region is increasingly exposed to various stress from natural disasters, mainly induced by climate change. And then as evidence here, Bay of Bengal region is leveled as very, very extreme risks by Global Risk Advisory Firm, Maplecroft, in their climate change vulnerability index. And the same firm says like, out of 170 countries, 16 countries were identified to be in extreme risks, of which 10 are said to be in Asia. And then these are the countries: Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Philippines, Afghanistan, Myanmar, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, and Pakistan. And then those figures in column are their ranks. So my main point is we are under extreme risks, under extremely risked vulnerable countries to this climate change impacts. And then equally so, we are responsible for this because like our greenhouse gas emission has been increasing, and then this figure shows the increase in GHG, greenhouse gas emission increase over the period. See, Bangladesh has increased over 23.6, Bhutan 44.9, India 44.8, Myanmar 11.5, Nepal 18%, Sri Lanka 9.2, and Thailand 18.2. So we are equally contributing towards those issues. And then looking at the temperature and rainfall, over the last 150 years, the global average temperature, surface temperature was said to have increased by around 0.76 degrees Celsius. And then the annual mean year surface air temperature has warmed by around 0.7 degrees Celsius during the period of 1901 to 2018, and is expected to warm further in the range of 2.4 to 4.4 degrees Celsius by end of the century. And sea surface temperature in tropical Indian Ocean has risen by 1 degree Celsius on average over the period of 1951 to 2015, and is projected to surge more during the current century. And climate modeling indicates that temperature in Asia will increase by 0.5 to 2 degrees Celsius by 2030, and by 1 to 7 degrees Celsius by 2070, And the rainfall during summer monsoon season will increase while it will decrease in dry winter. So it also predicts that Asia will also be affected by rise in global sea level of approximately 3 to 16 centimeter by 2030 and by 7 to 50 centimeter by 2070. And in last 5 decades, Asian region has experienced an average per decade temperature rise of 0.1 to 0.3 degrees Celsius, and it is expected to increase on average by 1 to 5 to 2 degrees Celsius by 2065, and further by 2.4 to 4.5 degrees Celsius by end of the century. And the physical fluid dynamic laboratory model is said to have predicted a rise in sea level of 0.05 to 0.25 centimeter by 2050 and 0.18 to 0.80 meter by the end of 21st century. So those are the prediction and consequences showing us about the climate change in our BIMSTEC region. So now coming to the climate change phenomenon in BIMSTEC region. Firstly, sea level rise. Sea level rise is closely related to thermal expansion due to rising ocean sea surface temperature and heat content. For example, North Indian Ocean was said to have rose at the rate of 3.3 millimeter per year during 1993 to 2017, mainly because of thermal expansion of the water. And the huge influx of fresh water from Ganges and Brahmaputra into Bay of Bengal causes significant changes in sea level along east coastline. And the northern Bay of Bengal was said to have experienced the highest sea level rise at 2 millimeter per year. And then rise in ocean surface sea temperature, heat content causes sea level rise is in turn associated with intensity of tropical cyclones, which is another huge disaster. And then the next phenomenon is extreme weather events. And precipitation in South Asia was found to be highly variable, as shown in terms of Bhutan's rainfall. And annual rainfall decreasing steadily in some regions and increasing, triggering droughts, while increasing drastically in others, causing floods. So it was proven that human-caused climate change is responsible for the increase in frequency, intensity, and amount of heavy rainfalls. And scientists have projected an increase of about 50% in post-monsoonal cyclogenesis by 2041 to 2060. However, upon long-term observation in Bay of Bengal region, there was significant reduction in those cyclones. However, in shorter period of 2000 to 2018, the frequency of very severe cyclones has been increased significantly. So thus, the conclusion is like within the reduced number of storms in the BIMSTEC region, more of them are going to be of very severe category. And in last 2 centuries, after 23 major cyclone disasters, 20 were said to have occurred among Bay of Bengal, particularly in Bangladesh and India, causing huge damages. And glacial lake outburst. Common people in Bhutan say the images of barren hilltop and highly reduced layer of ice sheets on the mountain tops are the signs of climate change, and rightly so. Climatologists have cautioned that melting ice in Himalaya is the sign of unpredicted climate disaster that would cause unbearable damages to whole of settlement downstream, and that too might happen in our lifetime. And the United Nations Environmental Program have projected that over 40 glacial lakes in Himalayas are on the verge of in the verge of bursting. And then countries such as India, Bhutan, and Nepal are found to be prone to recurring floods, mainly due to those glacial lake outbursts. And now the impact of climate change, vulnerable agriculture sector. As mentioned in earlier sessions, agriculture sector is known to be BIMSTEC region's primary source of employment, food security, and contribution towards GDP. And this is highly vulnerable to climate change. And as seen in the table, besides this shows how BIMSTEC region is dependent on agriculture for our GDP. There are increasing threats to the sector from natural hazards such as droughts, floods, and tropical cyclones caused due to climate change and global warming, and sea level rise, glacier melting in Himalayas, and as I said earlier, the variable rainfall. And the nutritional content of the cereals such as rice, wheat, and barley, which are the staple foods in the BIMSTEC region, are supposed to be reduced by the carbon dioxide. And as per the projection, it was predicted that an overwhelmingly 5 to 170 million South Asian people would become malnourished following a 5 to 30% fall in crop production by 2050. So this puts our agriculture sector and population into extreme risks due to climate change. Habitat or ecosystem loss. The rise in sea levels lead to land subsistence or habitat loss or ecosystem loss. For instance, Kolkata, Dhaka, Yangon, and Bangkok are found to be subsiding at an average rate between 10 to 32 millimeter per year. And ground surface in some areas in like Bangkok were said to have sunken below the mean sea level. And mangrove habitats in Bay of Bengal were also found to be under severe stress due to climate change, and then we would lose those habitats. And habitat loss includes displacement of croplands, forests, and human settlement. For instance, in 2007, Cyclone Cedar was reported to have destroyed over 647,000 hectares of cropland, 40,000 hectares of forest resources, livestock worth USD 18 million, besides contributing in loss of around USD 415 million worth of crop production. And in 2008, the breach of Kosi River embankment near the Indo-Nepal border was said to have caused massive floods that affected some 2.3 million people in India's northern state of Bihar and displaced over 60,000 people in Nepal. And economic loss. The BIMSTEC region are said to be incurring huge losses due to disasters resulting from climate changes. And then and the graph beside again shows how much of economy were being lost due to disaster in the BIMSTEC region. A panel data research on the relationship between climate changes in weather patterns and economic growth for Asian economics has found out that temperature and precipitation have significant negative relationship with GDP growth and also with productivity in agriculture, manufacturing, and service sectors. And then the impact is found to be more severe in agriculture sector. And then economic loss due to climate change is well described from this quote, and I quote, "During the passage of single tropical cyclone, the loss and damage inflicted by a few hours battering by waves, winds, and surges can undo the gains from many years of accumulative process," I unquote. And then fourthly, public health issue. Global warming has implications for public health of the region's staggering population totaling to almost 1.75 billion. And phenomena such as rising temperature, erratic rainfall, and severe floods are associated with diarrhea and other vector-borne diseases, including malaria and dengue. And the figure besides shows the description of pathways of potential health impacts of climate change. And besides, climate change could also potentially cause significant global health issues similar to the pandemic that we recently saw and is still ongoing. And for another instance, the 2015 heat waves across India and Pakistan were said to have claimed over 3,000 lives in both the countries. So this is the impact of climate changes. And then finally, speaking about the actions, the establishment of BIMSTEC Center for Weather and Climate, prioritizing climate change at the BRICS BIMSTEC Outreach Summit in 2016, and the conducting of the first BIMSTEC Disaster Management Workshop and Ministerial Meeting on Climate Change in 2017 were said to be some noteworthy initiatives on it. However, Considering climate threats in the region and transboundary nature of their impacts, BIMC countries must consider embarking on an ambitious climate change action through regional cooperation. Not just regional cooperation, we must also seek on getting the attention and the cooperation of internationally. It's because we must seek on international cooperation because Asian countries alone can do very little with regard to controlling climate change, as our share of greenhouse gas emission in comparison to developed nations are very insignificant. Hence, we must strive to having an international policy to adopt climate change mitigation actions to forums such as United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Although the poor contribute the least to causing climate change, as Bhutan do, they are the most adversely affected by this phenomenon due to their dependency on agriculture and then their limited ability to pay for the resources necessary to adopt the preventive measures and adaptation strategies. Economic growth depends on usage of energy that causes environmental degradation. However, later on, as economic grows, nations could afford to adopt better abatement technologies that might have minimal impact on climate change and bring some improvement to the quality of the environment. So that's why the developed international countries should also cooperate in these initiatives. So that's why those developed nations must take initiatives such as investing and adopting in green energies to help mitigate climate change and its impact. Bhutan, as I said earlier, has been combining the development and conservation of environment for decades to the policy of gross national happiness. Nevertheless, as I presented earlier, unless we continue this GNH state of development, our emission is going to far surpass our sink capacity. And even in that GNH state, unless we adopt or initiate electrification of our transport, so other initiatives are not going to be sufficient in keeping our emission below our sink capacity. So thus, I propose electrifying our transport sector is the key to reducing greenhouse gas emission and fighting climate change. But as per Bhutan's experience, electrifying transport is not cheap. It's very expensive, and we may not be able to afford it fully. So in this way, developed countries should incentivize poor countries or undeveloping countries like Bhutan to invest in electrifying our transport systems and to initiatives such as carbon trade-off. These are a list of references that I use for preparing this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wangdi. Very detailed analysis. Thank you. I'm sure it will be, I'll just mention one or two very significant points. He went in details into the whole issue of how the coastlines are going to be affected. And the second is the problem of high mountain areas in terms of warming. Because if the global average is 1 degree Celsius, the high mountains have an average of sometimes 2, 2.5 or 3. All these are very important issues for that water tower, but let us now go to the next panelist, Dr. Yogesh Gokhale, for his presentation.
This one. I should thank the first speaker because he has covered a lot of vulnerability issues which I was supposed to also mention. But at the onset, I must thank ISCS Government of India Ministry of External Affairs as well as the BIMSTEC Secretariat for inviting me for this important discussion meeting and allowing me to express my thoughts regarding the climate imperatives and initiatives. So as was, I will not spend much time in terms of the vulnerability issues which Mr. Sangai talked about, but yes, extreme weather events, sea level rise, GLOF, these are very serious issues as far as BIMSTEC countries are considered. And one point which he did not mention, that is about ADB estimates that there is a decrease of GDP of all BIMSTEC countries because of the impacts of climate change, and that's the impact which generally economists perceive pretty well, even though the local communities, they pay very hard price of impacts of climate change. But if we see the response of BIMSTEC per se, then in 2009, BIMSTEC actually internalized the issue of climate change and started saying that yes, we are going to work on climate change and that's our commitment. Then in 15th session at Nepal, in Kathmandu, they had a declaration, and in the declaration they stated, BIMSTEC state, and I quote, "We note with great concern of the increasing threat to our planet and livelihoods of the people from climate change and agree to combat the same at local, national and regional levels." So there is this comprehensive commitment in terms of attending this threat of climate change. We also commit to implement the Paris Climate Agreement in terms of climate change, and so there is an adherence towards what the countries are committing at the Paris climate change. And at the 5th BIMSTEC summit declaration in March 22 in Sri Lanka, again there is a resolve to continue with the BIMSTEC's resolve in terms of climate change issues across the region. So as one issue was pointed out, that is mangroves, habitat, coastal loss, and I tried to pull together, I didn't have much time, but I tried to pull together some data with respect to the status of mangroves across some of the member countries. Well, India did have a very minor increment, but India does face an issue with respect to degradation of mangroves across east as well as west coast. Bangladesh, there has been tremendous efforts even though so far, but still there is a degradation of 33% of mangroves in Bangladesh. Thailand, more than 60% of total mangrove forest has been converted to degraded in past 20 years. In Myanmar, there is a 63% degradation of mangrove areas. In Sri Lanka, there hasn't been a proper data that I could lay my hands on, but whatever anecdotal references I could come across, Sri Lanka also is facing a serious threat of mangrove degradation. So mangrove is a very serious issue, which is very common to most of the BIMSTEC countries, and I think that is something where I need to get your attention to understand the details of that. Now let's get into the commitments at Paris, what all the countries have given. And if you see that the colors, basically the purple color and the orange one, where these countries have said that we would go for having nature-based solutions as one of the components in terms of mitigation or adaptation. And if you see the encircled, the blue circle where the BIMSTEC, the BOB region comes, where all the countries, all the BOB, the BIMSTEC countries have said that yes, nature-based solutions that we would be adopting are in their national commitments or national reporting, they have nature-based solution as one of the components in terms of adaptation or mitigation. So what at this point of time, probably BIMSTEC countries, what they need is the combination of adaptation, inducing climate resilience and mitigation, all three strategies which need to be developed and implemented at regional level. Um, I'm using here nature-based solution as a technical term and not as a term for political negotiations, because India does not agree for the terminology of nature-based solution. We adopt ecosystem-based adaptation as the EBA as a terminology for negotiation. But in terms of communicating, please consider NBS as a technical terminology and not as a terminology for negotiation. So NBS probably is an important point of approach for BIMSTEC to consider and walk further. And mangrove is one such example which can be actually talked about, treated and acted upon with respect to NBS approach. BOB region is a perfect case to develop a comprehensive and holistic approach for developing adaptation and mitigation plans based on restoration and afforestation projects for mangrove areas. Let me give you nature-based, what do we mean by nature-based solution? The term which has started from Glasgow COP, that is the COP which happened just 2 years back, in the COP 26. Nature-based solution is not something very different, or it's a new knowledge. It need not be a new knowledge. It's basically a new knowledge, but is reinvention of existing solutions or adopting the traditional ecological knowledge. And I believe, and what my understanding, what we have worked so far in the Indian situation, we share similar socio-cultural, socio-ecological milieu, and we do share similar kind of knowledge all across, and we have to work upon that knowledge, and why I would tell you further. There is a fact that there is a limited funding for achieving national commitments, whether it is UNFCCC, whether it is Convention on Biological Diversity, whether it is UNCCD. There have been inadequate support from multilateral organizations. There has been a limited funding that is available from developed country to developing country. In the recent COP, there was a announcement of loss and damage fund, but already Green Climate Fund pledge of $100 billion is not even made to half of it. And now creating loss and damage fund is not only a solution, because unless and until that fund gets money, then and then only the name would justify and would get implemented. So what remains with us, but that doesn't mean the countries like us, the BIMSTEC region, should be starved and should be left to die to the impact of climate change. So we do need to think about our own situations, and probably nature-based solution could be one of the strongest way to look at those. Now, NBS is cost effective. Now there are a number of examples where NBS allows you $10 per ton of carbon dioxide sequestration, as against technological value of average $60 per ton of carbon dioxide equivalent for sequestration. So NBS does prove very strong way. What is NBS? How it can be interpreted then? So I have tried to just put together some of the examples which can be expanded, like say in case of ecosystem situation, for say forestry and biodiversity. So plantation forestry or sustainable forest management could be one of the ways in which we could think about. Right now, especially I would take the example of plantation forestry and sustainable forest management. In case of plantation forestry, which is called as ARR in carbon market parlance, the mangrove plantations are in huge demand all across the world, because mangrove ecosystems are one of the highest producers or sequesters of carbon dioxide, which is almost more than 30 tons of CO2 equivalent per hectare per year. And that's a huge rate in which carbon sequestration happens in mangrove areas in comparison to the terrestrial ecosystems. And that's why restoration as well as rejuvenation of mangroves would not only sequester more and more carbon, but it would attract much more investments in form of carbon market. And I think BIMSTEC countries, that there cannot be any other area which can be actually attract such investments than BOB region. There are number of NBS examples which are already ongoing in one way or other in most of the BIMSTEC countries, and I will not explain those at this point of time here, but I will concentrate on few aspects. Now, how NBS could be thought about? So, this I have tried to explain with respect to the policies which are in vogue in Indian situation. I have tried to explain. So, we have a comprehensive policy with respect to management of forest and natural resources. We have national forest policy, we have water policy, we have environment policy, we have bamboo mission, we have wildlife protection acts, agroforestry policies. We have a plethora of policy which is supporting the mitigation aspect as well as the adaptation through various efforts. And then under those policy provisions, we are actually having very concrete programs in terms of restoration of areas, in terms of plantations. Like we have CAMPA funds, through which we are pouring more than 400 to 500 crores annually for plantation in all across India. Rather it would be more than that, because we have a kitty of around 65,000 crores, and from the interest of that, the plantation programs are happening for past since 2019. Then we have Manrega, through which various natural resource management activities are getting conducted. We have Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana watershed component. Then we have lot of activities happening through CSR programs. Then through agroforestry policy, there is a program called SMAF, and through that large-scale agroforestry plantations have taken place in number of states, including Punjab, Karnataka, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh. Then, very interestingly, Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, where we have been able to reach more than 8 crore population, where the access to LPG has taken place. Now, it's always a point of criticism in terms of refill of LPG gas. But it's very interesting to note that very recent, even today, if you see the data, then on an average, there are 3 refills which are happening from Ujjwala Yojana. So Ujjwala Yojana is a very interesting model where you are directly reducing the extraction of unsustainable harvest of fuel wood from forest and allowing forest to rejuvenate. So it's a very critical aspect in terms of climate adaptation. So if you see in Indian situation, which are not far different than other BIMSTEC countries, that NBS is a package which is like implementation of soil and water conservation, which we have done for over 60 million hectares since 1970s. We have network of protected areas, more than 755 wildlife protected areas India is conserving. There are more than 5,000 varieties of rice across country, and this is something, the germplasm resource, which all the BIMSTEC countries, they share and they have. It's a very robust resource to develop climate resilient agriculture, and it's very critical for our survival. There are huge traditions which are actually the ecological traditions which are protecting nature, and like Indian situation, and I'm sure because I have also seen those in other BIMSTEC countries, that we have sacred conservation practices. We protect forest because of faith in local deities. And we have more than 2 lakh sacred groves which are spread across India, which is a very significant aspect in terms of participatory conservation. And these issues are directly contributing to achievement of number of SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, as well as, so we are not only committing to our commitments towards UNFCCC, CBD and UNCCD, but also contributing directly towards achievement of Sustainable Development Goals and by 2030. So in conclusion, what I would say that climate action is a very strong and timely agenda to innovate and share knowledge for BOB region. It will also lead to cost-effective and indigenous solutions to be available through decentralized mechanism. Like for example, the germplasm resources, the climate resilient crops are being there with local communities. One needs to explore and make those available to society. That is an important aspect. BIMSTEC can take advantage of experience of countries like India in terms of policy and legal instruments along with various national level schemes on NBS. And the last one, as mangroves form an important point of convergence for BIMSTEC countries, leading to multiple co-benefits and opportunities of developing financial mechanisms to evolve and protect the mangrove area. And there have been several studies which have taken place after the cyclones in Bay of Bengal, that wherever there were mangrove plantations or forests available, the impact of those cyclones have been considerably reduced in those villages in comparison to the villages where there were no mangrove cover available. So mangrove, having mangrove as your safeguard, as your coast guard, will not only have carbon sequestered, but will also save your livelihoods, will also save your number of other and provide a number of other co-benefits. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you, Yogesh ji. Thank you very much. Well, we really got alerted to the importance of nature-based solutions from Dr. Gokhale, and in particular the role of mangrove forests in both physical protection of the coastlines as well as the whole issue of greenhouse gas mitigation. This is a very interesting angle he has taken, and he continues his research on mangroves, and we look forward to even getting more ideas on these in future from him. May I now invite Professor Shamin Reza to make his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for setting the tone for today's session by taking us back to 1980s when we all started thinking about climate change. And I was recalling reading Shershendu's novel, where he invented a character who was started talking about climate change. That's, I think, written in the 1980s. And also thanks my previous speakers for providing quite important information and data, which also covers Bangladesh, particularly my colleague from Bhutan. This is, I'm not going to provide lots of data or scientific information here, but as the Honorable State Minister said, that we need more suggestions and pragmatic solutions to do that. But these are, of course, very important, that we are studying, we are collecting our own data, and not solely relying on the Western data or whatever suggestions they are giving. So I think speaks of the great strength that BIMSTEC countries are doing, and we must appreciate that as well. And thank you for being here, in the sense that in Bengali culture we say after lunch we have bhat ghum. We feel a bit sleepy because we eat rice, but still I can see a good number of audience and listeners are still here. And it's great to be here in Kolkata. Which is, of course, the BIMSTEC's look-east policy and Indian government's interest in look-east policy, and that's quite significant. Now, to start with this photo, Mr. Chair, this is not my photo. I don't have any copyright, just collected from different sources. From Thailand, I think, if I can pronounce it correctly, Chao Phraya, the river near Bangkok, is flooded, and this is a very common scene in the BIMSTEC countries these days. And people, those have been living in the coastal belts or coastal region of current India and Bangladesh, they know what the disasters are and what the impact of climate change are better than anyone else in the world. So they have been living with it for many centuries. But it took us many decades to form something called environmental journalism. It took us many decades to form something called climate change journalism. It might be buzzwords, but we have been living with it for many, many years. But maybe our understanding of the changes, indigenous understanding of the changes, and the scientific data of the scientific community didn't meet each other. So that might be one of the reasons that we couldn't come up the way the other countries could do that. Now, instead of providing more data, I would say it's towards collective actions. So I'll be talking from communication point of view, more for collaboration, sharing, and collective actions, advocacy, all this. Let me start with the Bangladesh's response to climate change. I mean, very quickly, at the national level, we also had several major achievements in terms of planning as well as action. We have been working it for quite some time now. But previously, Bangladesh spent almost billions of dollars on several hundred projects and activities, which is related to adaptation, but not really on the mitigation aspect. But currently, there is a balance between mitigation aspects and adaptation. And there are a number of national planning, like nationally determined contribution called NDC. We have one called NAP, National Adaptation Plan, as well as the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, which is a long-term planning to combat the climate changes. And in COP27, there has been a good achievement that we all agreed unanimously to create a new fund for loss and damage. We have to wait until COP28 to materialize that. But it's a good achievement for the country like Bangladesh or India, who has been advocating for long for such a compensation fund or global fund. As my previous speaker said, it's not sufficient enough and we need more. But at least, better that we have done something. So I think as BIMSTEC member states, we can say that we have achieved something as a result of our advocacy and global diplomacy. There are other issues. It has been, apart from that, Bangladesh experience has been appreciated by Ban Ki-moon recently. He warned about the sea level rise, but still said it comes to adaptation is the best teachers, Bangladesh, and people can learn from this. And also, India is a good experience, I must say, in the sense that the LIFE program that I come across is quite interesting, from households to green energy. I think the current government is applying in India. It's similar kind of program, and which should also be appreciated here. And Bangladesh is well placed to achieve its climate change goals of the whole of society approach. I mean, that's what I want to focus on, rather than tackling it at the government level only by the government. I think there should be greater engagement of the government, non-governmental organizations, the grassroots organizations, the indigenous organizations. There are many organizations which doesn't have any formal structure, for example. We don't go to them and we don't talk to them. We don't get their experiences. We think that we only have the scientific evidence, scientific knowledge and research. The bureaucrats, the diplomats and experts, we do our planning, but sometimes we don't talk to them. Either we don't want to create any channel to talk to them, or we think maybe their indigenous knowledge is not sufficient enough, to address this bigger global change, and for which we rely on scientific knowledge. I'm not ignoring that fact, but look at this photo. It is taken from UNICEF side, clogged water in Bangladesh, after the cyclonic storm, which is going to impact not only the lives of children and young people, but their education as well, also their employment in the future. So what we are talking about, we do talk lots of other things on agriculture, on fisheries, on other aspects. But if you take education, for example, only, it's millions of children will not be having any school buildings. When you don't have school buildings, you don't have any school system. I mean, you didn't go to school. You become mature, you reach your adolescent stage, you don't go to middle school or colleges, and imagine after 10 or 15 years, millions of people in BIMSTEC country will be without an education. Not that government could not provide the facilities for education, but there is no school building, there is an infrastructure, there is no place. I mean, let alone about the Bengal Delta's experience of river erosion, that's another experience. The buildings are washed away. But take the floods example only. It's a common problem in the coastal areas in India, in Bangladesh, some parts of Thailand, and maybe we're not quite sure what's going to happen to other countries in the past. Now, there are challenges. Even if you receive this loss and damage fund, even if BIMSTEC creates something extraordinary fund, or we get it from other development partners, about maintaining transparency in implementing all initiatives. We are already talking about it. For example, in Bangladesh, sometimes there are media reports that whether we are spending it well with transparency and with accountability. So whatever fund we receive, I think transparency is one of the agendas that we must maintain in implementing the initiatives. And then managing public opinion in support of the projects. I'm not saying that we need to manipulate public opinion, but we need to get people's consent that this is what we are going to do. As a country specific, Bangladesh needs it, India is a large country, India needs it, and BIMSTEC needs it. I mean, normally these groupings or these cooperations or these multilateral sectors do not always care for public opinion. I was talking to one of the senior diplomats, the gentleman sitting in front of me last night, that do we need enough public consent or public opinion to do that? But my experience of spending my education years with the European people, with Americans, I still believe that we need public consent, we need public support, not only for our project, but setting our agenda. And BIMSTEC must not make that mistake. And BIMSTEC countries must talk to the people, must create a channel. And whatever, it can be through the academic researchers, could be through media, could be through your own channels, could be through political. Nothing is without politics. Disaster has its own politics. Just, recall the example of 1960s cyclonic storm in the coastal area of the then East Pakistan. It causes terrible, terrible, disaster in human lives. We still don't know how many millions of people died. And it impacted the 1970s election, and along with other issues that really eventually led to the war of independence in Bangladesh. So you cannot really separate the people's consent, the disaster, the impact of global change, and all these things separately. I mean, these are in a package. So the public opinion is important. I'm begin cautioning by managing. I'm not suggesting that you have to manipulate it, but get it, talk to them. And then making BIMSTEC a climate change agenda and initiatives visible. I mean, this, as a communication person, visibility is very important to me. I want BIMSTEC to be visible. As a BIMSTEC citizen, I expect BIMSTEC activities should be visible, should be more popular. There is an issue of popularizing something. Unless this climate agenda in BIMSTEC countries has become a popular, become a household name, you can't really do that. And, climate change has been a buzzword. Everybody knows about it, but not everybody has got the access to scientific data. In a similar manner, let's make the BIMSTEC climate change agenda visible, that everybody understands, everybody knows about it, they're aware of it. And taking concerted actions. I would focus it, time and again, that government, NGOs, civil society, grassroots organizations, everyone, let's put them on board. I mean, what Bangladesh is trying to do now, could have done previously, that rather than making it only the intergovernmental actions or only a national, governmental actions, let's make it a concerted collective actions where everybody can, play their part. And collaboration, engagement, and sharing. I mean, the three very catchy words. And sharing resources and technical information, whether all BIMSTEC countries have got access to all the scientific researches and evidences. I mean, it's good to see that my friends from other BIMSTEC countries are relying on Bangladesh data, where the friend from Bhutan was referring to lots of Bangladesh studies. I'm sure that Bangladeshi researchers have access to Indian resources. So let's create a hub where the people can share the resources and technical information. We really need technical information. And lots of collaborative research and dissemination of findings. We need collaborative research. Not only, say for example, the Sundarbans. If the Bangladesh does research only on Sundarbans and impact of climate change on the mangrove forest, it's not going to help. I mean, we need collaborative research with India to save this mangrove forest. So we need this collaborative research. It can be through think tanks, through government level, or through the academia. And still, I would say that our history friends are, even back home, still, more interested in the dynastic politics, history of all these things, but kings and queens. But how many studies have you seen on climate change and the history of climate change, or the history of environmental changes, or on agriculture, for example? I mean, we go to King's College in London, where the computer-generated data is tracing back the climate change history of the Harappan civilization and providing us data from a few thousand years back. So why not having this collaborative research and dissemination of findings? And dissemination findings should be in various ways, not only the scientific dissemination of findings, but also in a simpler term, so that my interest in the grassroots people can understand. And they have their own understanding of scientific, what we call scientific data, but they understand it their way. So there should be a collaboration and initiatives of grassroots participation. Let them participate. I mean, what the Indian friends say, that nature-based solution, I mean, they have to participate. They have their experience. So all the BIMSTEC countries have, I'm sure that thousands of indigenous organizations, thousands of indigenous bodies, if I say. So let's go to them, talk to them. The research communities can go there and get their views so that they can participate in various initiatives. And again, in the adaptation, I'm not going to talk about it. And adaptation is something that they must be part of this. And involving business organization NGOs in the climate change mitigation. Because if you want to talk about green energy, all this eco-friendly energy, the cost-efficient energy systems, then you need to have the business organizations and NGOs with us, along with the governments. This is a photo from India. I'm sure you will find many, many photos like this. I mean, sometimes we, as a city dweller, something we show pity. Oh, what a picture, they must be suffering a lot. But imagine the future of the BIMSTEC countries. I mean, it's only those vulnerable people, but there can be millions of people who might have the similar fates in the days to come unless we take action. Now, on the strategic planning level, I think the BIMSTEC region can be a role model in providing affordable green energy, which is already in place. I mean, there are agreements between India and Bangladesh. There are agreements between, there are talks going on between Bhutan, Bangladesh, and India, or Nepal, Bangladesh, India. So let's materialize those things. I think the experts are there, our policymakers are there. So the region can be a role model in doing so. I mean, we do talk about affordable green energy, but let's implement this. I mean, this is one of the areas that we should have the strategic planning. And the 7 countries of the Bay of Bengal can really develop a renewable energy network. I'm not an energy expert, but I'd imagine, as a general public, that there should be an energy network in a sustainable and eco-friendly manner. I mean, whatever literature I have got access to from India, that the Indian current government is also interested in this, and India's Prime Minister has taken personal interest in it. But let's form a network, more flexible, more user-friendly, sustainable, and eco-friendly, so that we don't have to think of other side effects of implementing this project. For now, we have to think of short-term implications as well as the long-term implications. And just to mention one of the organizations, that the Center for Weather and Climate, WC under BIMSTEC, I think it needs to be equipped enough to facilitate applied scientific researches. This is doing good, providing the meteorological information, weather information, but I would expect that it can do better. I think we can provide more resources to this, and there can be more branches or chapters in other countries, more collaborative efforts, so that they're well equipped to facilitate applied scientific researches in the BIMSTEC countries in weather, in climate changes, and to promote scientific capacity building. There are 2 things, I mean, scientific research and the capacity building. So both are very important at the moment, and of course within the framework of BIMSTEC cooperation. I mean, this is one of the recommendations I would like to make here. And then the new global loss and damage funding has created potential, obviously, to the BIMSTEC to bring a new global approach to tackling climate change. I think BIMSTEC, as I said, could be not only a role model in providing affordable green energy at the mitigation level, but also can do the global diplomacy in a collective way, that we are the BIMSTEC countries. This is what we think is good for BIMSTEC region, as well for rest of the world. So we have those resources, we have those intents and capacity, and with proper planning, proper investment, I think it's possible to do. Again, after a cyclonic storm in the coastal belt of Bangladesh. I mean, it's a very bright, high-resolution photo, but life is not that romantic or charming on the ground. It's, I think, mud there, everything has been devastated. I once recall that I went to do a social research after Sidor, and being a city person, I mean, I couldn't imagine what these disasters and the natural, the calamities could do to people's livelihood, what not. So, obviously in that case, the concluding remarks would be advocacy and participation. I mean, I don't expect the top, the planners of BIMSTEC will be doing the advocacy by themselves, but there should be some mechanism to do advocacy at the global level. I mean, that's really BIMSTEC can really do at the moment. And in addition to public opinion and media support, I mean, they can really do this thing very well. And in addition to country-specific issues, I think we should also find some common BIMSTEC climate change agendas. I would say sea level rise, that the issue of climate refugees, there are lots of displacement, then there are water security, the green energy issues, agriculture, food security, education, employment, tourism. So let's have country-specific agendas to tackle climate change, as well as we should have some common BIMSTEC advocacy agenda so we can take it to the next level, to the global level, that what BIMSTEC can do it for themselves and for the global community to combat this climate change. And I would finish, Mr. Chair, by remembering Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore a little bit, that he was concerned about nature and environment. I'm not going to label him as an environmentalist or as a naturalist or whatever, but in his time, there was no buzzword called climate change. He didn't experience it. He interchangeably used, in both his Bengali writing and English writing, nature and environment. In one of his short writings in English, he used, I think, 13 or 14 times he used nature, 1 or 2 times environment. What I want to mean here, that the climate change, environment, nature are all together. Let's not separate these things. Let's imagine them in a package. And BIMSTEC should really take care of that immediately so that, without any delay, we can really take care of climate changes for us, for BIMSTEC region, and for everyone else who cared for this. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Shamin Reza. Gone in great details on proposing adaptation agenda for BIMSTEC, drawing our attention more to adaptation than to mitigation. Because if you see the greenhouse gas emission of the various 7 countries, most of them need not worry about mitigation because they cannot do much on mitigation. So adaptation is an agenda, and he very rightly has strengthened the cause of adaptation. He also, from Bangladesh, the whole issue of floods and protection from floods, which is expected to be more and more intense because the rainfall pattern is going to change. More rainfall in less time is going to be the pattern, and that will create obviously more inundation. So this is a general open challenge to the whole region, because all the region, right from Thailand to Sri Lanka, will have this problem. And he has correctly drawn our attention to the issue of flooding. Now, may I now invite Dr. Rajdeep Roy, Honorable Member of Parliament of India, to make his presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My greetings to the chair and all my co-panelists. As the last batsman, when every other batsman has played all the shots and all the square cuts and the drives, and all your runs are already on board. So it's very difficult to execute a new shot and bring out a new topic and speak on something. I happen to be an orthopedic surgeon by training, and by passion I am in public life and in the parliament for the last 4 years. I have little interest in environment and environmental issues, and I have an NGO with which I have been working in Northeast and has been organizing the Green Summit in Northeast India for the last 7 years. Friends, climate change is not just a buzzword today. It has captivated the mind and the mind space of not just the lawmakers, but also the bureaucrats, the scholars, and everybody. I'm not a domain expert, but I'll try to keep my talk today primarily on what our government is thinking, what we need to do, how we need to move forward on this issue. And this issue is very critical. Bay of Bengal, as we all share as a common neighbor, is not just a geographical area. It's a pond of around 49,000 square kilometers, which is a huge area. It has got a huge coastline, everybody has spoken about it. It's very important to understand over centuries how Bay of Bengal has helped us nurture the civilization around this, helped trade and commerce to flourish, and in a way, majorly impacted our life. Greenhouse gas, as everybody is talking of, is a reality today. And we have to understand that increase in temperature to about 2 degree or 3 degree or maybe 4 or 5 degree in the entire globe will cause immense change. All the glaciers will melt, the water level will rise, not just the seas, but also in the rivers. And what it will do to us is unbelievable. It will affect our livelihood. It will affect our means of earning our bread and butter. It will also affect the place where we stay. We are in the process of migration from the coastal areas up towards the hills. And where it will lead us to, we have seen that excess of migration, making homes in the Himalayas, what it is doing, and what are the natural tragedies that are taking place, the cracks that are happening, the earthquakes that are happening, the landslide, the mudslides, the cloudburst. These are all issues, these are all realities. When we were students in the 70s, we never heard of this. The only thing that we heard of was the cyclone hitting Cox's Bazar and the Sundarbans. Today, we are happy to announce that Sundarban is actually, the mangroves are slowly and slowly increasing. Over a period of last few years, we have probably increased the mangrove forest cover by about 0.5%, which is not bad. What is the importance of Meghna river basin to Bangladesh and India, especially the northeastern part of India, parts of West Bengal and Bangladesh, is immense. If we do not honor and respect these natural habitats, these ecologies, it is very important that they will pay us back in equal terms and all. And we have to face the wrath of nature. The BIMSTEC countries, these 7 countries, actually connects the ecologies between the Himalayas and the Bay of Bengal. These 2 ecologies are slightly different from each other, but they are interdependent on each other. And we, as these 7 countries, share a past. And under the British Raj of about almost 200 years, not much attention was paid to it. We all got independence slowly and slowly, by and large, the same time. And the priorities for the political leadership of that time was different. Climate was not a priority, obviously, and we cannot blame them wholeheartedly for it. There was food shortage, it was discussed in the previous session. People had to address the food shortages. Connectivity became the buzzword. Economy slowly and slowly came up, how to tackle with economies. So from food shortage to connectivity to economy, we dealt with a whole lot of issues over the past 7 or 8 decades. But it is important to mention that if we need to address the issues of climate change and the pitfalls of it, a country has to be economically and politically stable. A country that is not politically stable, a country that is not economically stable will not give the priorities that is required for climate change and to issues the address of climate change. So therein lies the importance. Our country needs to be, all our countries, And you cannot survive in isolation. All of us need to have a bonding to survive together. All countries have their issues. Let's start from Sri Lanka, a country which is heavily dependent on fossil fuel, and the economic crisis which is gone. We know why it has happened. I'll not go into that because that is a political issue. But we are seeing light at the end of the tunnel slowly. And we need to address those issues. India had been a good friend of Sri Lanka in the recent past. And we hope that obviously Sri Lanka will just turn the corner. In India, we have a variety of issues. A country of 1.3 billion people, it's not a matter of joke. A huge coastline, huge forest. It is also important to understand that over the past 8 to 9 years, we have increased our forest cover by almost 19,000 square kilometers, which is not a bad. Mr. Gokhale, who is here, he is a researcher, he is a domain expert. I looked at all his slides. I had most of it written, but I'm at a loss of words because he has already spoken on most of my issues. The problem with Nepal and Bhutan are also almost because they lie in the Himalayas. The issues of climate change affecting them, floods, the landslides, the earthquakes, the economy getting down, political stability needs to be taken care of also. And they are landlocked. I also come from a part of the country in southern part of Assam where I'm surrounded by hills on all sides. And I know what political leadership has done to my constituency over the past 70 years. If I have to move out from my constituency, even from Silchar, if I have to go to Guwahati, I need a tortuous journey of 8 to 10 hours across the hills. And I'm surrounded by hills. So in a landlocked situation like this, I understand that if you have to develop the economy of these two countries, especially Nepal and Bhutan, you have to have good connectivity. And you have to nurture all your resources as per the plans, which is nature friendly. Friends, the issues of Bangladesh, as I have said, the Meghna River Basin is one of the most viable ecosystem in the world. An area with almost 54 rivers, small and big. The mangrove forest, the Sundarbans, covering it. Bangladesh, after 2026, will become a developing nation. The priorities of Bangladesh will also change. And they will have to address the issues of big business houses and corporates will leave the Bangladesh shore and go to East Africa for the textile production. So you will have to think of an economy after 2026. Bangladesh also needs to address another issue along with India, is that migration, climate migration is taking place. And I am given to understand that almost more than 2 million people will be affected because of this in the coming 6 to 7 years, which is a very important, very high number. As far as Myanmar is concerned, Myanmar has, it seems, lost 4 million hectares to forest fires in the last few years. So the ecology is changing. Though Myanmar has a good river system, it was once considered to be the rice bowl of Asia. Today it has issues to address: political stability, economy. As I said, if you do not use these two vital issues, climate change will never become your priority. Friends, I have been a vocal supporter of seamless travel across the BIMSTEC countries. I happened to lead a team of Indian parliamentarians to Japan just 4 or 5 months back. And we've held various rounds of meetings with the Japanese ministers and Japanese Treasury bench MPs and opposition bench MPs. And few of the people were asking the same question: is India serious with BIMSTEC? Is India serious with Quad? Is India serious with J? J is like Japan, America, and India. Quad, as we know, is Japan, America, India, and Australia. BIMSTEC, similarly, though started 25 years back, went into slumber. In between 10 years, there was no buzz around BIMSTEC and all. Till the time the BIMSTEC again, in a remodeled package, it again came up. The number of conferences that should have been there has obviously not happened. But thankfully, Indian Prime Minister has pumped in resources to the tune of probably $1 million so that the headquarter issue is solved. So we have a permanent headquarter of BIMSTEC in Dhaka. And I was asking Dr. Raja, my friend from Bangladesh, whether this office is coming up. He said, yes, it is coming up, but it needs to develop. As far as the weather change issue is concerned, India has promised funds and has set up a center in Noida for predicting the weather changes, and all the BIMSTEC countries are involved in it. So obviously these things are coming up. So we need to be first serious about the BIMSTEC countries. Are we really putting in our resources? Are we serious about these changes, not just climate, about seamless travel as I was telling? Just imagine today, if I have to come from my hometown Silchar to Kolkata by road, I have to travel 8 to 9 hours to Guwahati, that's around 350 kilometers, then to Siliguri, that is around 700 kilometers and 7 to 8 hours. And then from Siliguri to Kolkata, it makes a huge. But if I have to travel through Bangladesh, my western border is very near to my home, it is 60, 70 kilometers. Then I travel all the way across Bangladesh, and 1200 kilometers I'll end up in Kolkata. So we need to think out of the box. The solution has to come. The seamless travel across borders will actually change the dynamics of how the BIMSTEC countries think. We can replicate the European Union model. Now, if you drive in Europe for about, say, half a day, you will probably have crossed 2 to 3 countries. So that's the reality of the coming generation. If you don't adapt, if you don't change, if you don't make laws, thinking of the next century, we will be at a loss because something else will creep up in the meantime. Friends, it is very important to tell what government of India has done in this field because most of the policies has been shown up by Professor Gokhale, and I compliment him. Your presentation has been very excellent, to the point, and you have raised a few important issues. I would like to say a few words about what planning government of India is doing. All of us are aware of COP26 that took place at Glasgow, because it was actually in many ways, it was one of the most happening environmental so-called seminar or conference that took place all over the world after the Paris Convention of 2015. And Indian Prime Minister very rightly led that conference and gave the Panchamrit, the nectar elements that Indian climate change people needs to tackle. What are those? He said is that we have to reach 500 gigawatt of non-fossil energy capacity by 2030. And how much have we reached in the last few years is that almost 40% of it is probably achieved. Second one, 50% of the energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030. The third Amrit of the Panchamrit is reduction of total projected carbon emission by 1 billion tons from the date of COP26 to 2030. The fourth was the reduction of carbon intensity of the economy by 45% by 2030. And the fifth and the last one being achieving the target of net zero emission, which everybody knows, and that target is 2070. Ujjwala Yojana is one scheme that Mr. Gokhale spoke of. It's not just a political issue that we are giving subsidies to people who want LPG connection. Before 2014, there were 3 crore LPG connection in the country. And what is the number today? After 8 years down the line, we have almost 8 crores plus, 8.5 crores plus connections. Which means these 8.5 crore families now do not have to go to forest to collect their firewood. So this is an immense change that has taken place. Now this is also a health issue. Just imagine the black soot that used to cover their kitchen, and these are the females, generally, if they work in their kitchen for 1.5 hours, 2 times in a day, just imagine the amount of black smoke they are inhaling. As a doctor, when I see sometimes the post-mortem, I see what does the black lungs look like. It is inhaling 100 cigarettes if you work for 3 hours under black suit like this. So the female brigade in our country, the sisters, the mothers, the grandmothers, whoever has worked have actually applauded this policy decision, and this is a reality, and it can be replicated all across the BIMSTEC countries today. Friends, lifestyle for environment, that is LIFE in short form, our Prime Minister along with Mr. Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, announced this sustainable lifestyle and sustainable patterns of consumption to address the climate change issues. And this was a part of COP27. And we are very happy that our Prime Minister has taken a lead on that. Promoting circular economy, that is waste to wealth, is also one of the principles which government of India is working on. And I hope that we'll be able to convert all this waste to wealth. If many of you do not know, please go to Indore and see how the Indore Municipal Corporation is working today. This city has been voted as the 7th cleanest city in India, the first cleanest city in India for 7 consecutive terms. And it has done amazing job, and they are, they are showcasing how they are doing it to the entire world. Today, the city of Indore is not just the cleanest city in India, but it also is probably the cleanest city in the entire Asia. So this is what our policy makers are doing, thinking, and working on. The other issue is National Clean Air Program. Just few days back, in my home state of Assam, the 5 cities have been installed this clean air monitoring machines by Government of India. And my city was one of them. And I was monitoring the parameters and all. When Delhi and Kolkata were showing above 300 AQI, my city was showing 42, 44, 48. So that's what Northeast India and maybe part of Bangladesh, we are not yet touched by industrialization or concrete buildings all around. But at least in terms of National Clean Air Program, its monitoring, this is doing an interesting job. As far as renewable energy is concerned, today India stands 4th in the renewable energy installed capacity, that is large hydro is included. Today we are the 4th wind power capacity in the world. We are also 4th in the solar power capacity. It is important to mention that just a few years back, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with the then French President, Mr. Hollande, announced the formation of International Solar Alliance amongst 121 countries, primarily lying between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So it is a very important development, and BIMSTEC countries are all touched by this policy. As far as the forest conservation, I have already given the data. The forest conservation has also improved. And I think even in my state, my Chief Minister, the then Chief Minister, Mr. Shorbananda Sonowal, who today is the shipping port and Minister today in Government of India, undertook the plantation of 1 crore saplings in a span of 5 years. And we achieved that so that today Assam is also having a huge forest cover, and it is increasing over the years. So friends, here we are at a climate change issue to be discussed under BIMSTEC countries. And I assure that think tanks like this, and I must thank ICSC for encouraging a developmental discussion like this and in a forum like this. Unless and until the NGOs and forum like this come forward, it is not possible for us to learn new things and how we can take the cream of the discussion and make it into a policy. So I also thank Sri Arindam Mukherjee for having called me and invited me over here and giving me a chance to speak to this learned gathering. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roy. A very wide canvas you have painted on the issue of the BIMSTEC and climate change. Well, we are half an hour behind schedule, and it's the end of the day, last of the sessions. But I think the four distinguished panelists gave us very, very important, interesting points, from the small micro-level example of mangroves to the broad target of BIMSTEC in general on various issues, and particularly the issue of futuristic social situation, 20 years hence, what is going to be the power distribution in the society, and how the whole issue of climate change, particularly adaptation, have to be addressed. I do not know, the organizers, how much more time we can give for question and answers, but there is definitely, I'm sure there will be lots of questions. So can I get an answer, how much extra time we can give? 5. Okay, so please, questions please, comments, and you may mention any of the panelists or general. Yes.
Yes.
Please give the microphones to the speakers from the
Yes.
floor.
Hello. My name is Mihir Bhosle. I'm an assistant policy analyst with Cuts International. Thank you, Dr. Gokhale, for bringing up the whole issue of, about the loss and damages fund. We at Cuts, I just wanted to say that we are part of this, endorsing this campaign for financial transaction tax, the proceeds of which could go to the loss and damages fund, and which can help that up. So my question to the panelists is that climate finance being a gray area for all to grapple with, how can we think of alternative ways or alternative sources of financing climate adaptation or climate mitigation? So I would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Okay. One of the panelists, Dr. Gokhale, will first start.
Hello. I think thanks for this question. Hello. Thanks for this question, because I did not get enough time to actually elaborate upon the carbon finance. But why I am insisting upon mangroves, especially the plantation part, because the mitigation is a very potential source of getting carbon finance. And carbon finance in the voluntary market at this stage is happening in the form of polluter-pays principle, on the basis of polluter-pays principle. Number of MNCs are committing for net zero. So from where they will compensate their emission, so they will have to invest somewhere like mangrove plantation, where there will be the sequestration that would happen, though that would be compensated against the emission that is being done by the MNCs. And that is a very important source of finance. And mangrove is one such area that I am talking about. And there are established methodologies, those are available and various voluntary market platforms which are available. So BIMSTEC as a group doesn't have to actually work on many things. Many things are there in place. What we need to do is that we need to channelize, we need to pull the landmass, make the landmass, make the commitments, get the people on the ground, make technical know-how, get investments in nurseries for plantations, ensure protection of plantations. So these are cooperative efforts that the countries, as a group, we can do. But who would pay? The polluters would actually pay for it. And that is where the climate finance is totally doable and is happening also right away at this point of. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have answered from like a kind of advocacy point of view that in Bangla, আমি দাবি ছাড়বো কেন? I mean, why should I stop advocating for these compensation funds? I mean, we should keep on pressing about it. We should keep on talking about it. But at the same time, or parallelly, we must focus on adaptation as well. Because it might take another 10 years, another 15, 20 years. I'm just guessing. So we should take care that what our farmers are going to do, what our coastal people are going to do. What about our renewable energy in the green energy sector? We can do that. So we'll keep on doing our scientific researches. We'll keep on, taking up eco-friendly projects and also find alternative to livelihood, alternative means and alternative adaptation policies. But we must not give up by saying, okay, you have given half of the money than expected. So, okay, we are fine with it. No, we will not fine with it. I mean, we must, keep on insisting and keep on talking about it. But at the same time, we must find alternative ways, so that the adaptation mechanisms are going forward. I mean, that's what my take in this situation is.
Thank you, Professor. Next question, please. One more, and then we have to close the session. Yes. Is it? Yeah, sure.
Since there is no question, I would like to compliment further on that climate financing. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, maybe I was not that clear. I was insisting on this carbon trade-off of that financing, because I'll give a typical example in Bhutan. In Bhutan, we focus very much on not on mitigation, because after having produced that, we have no capacity to mitigate that. So we focus on not producing it in the first hand. And then that typical example is by the environmental law of Bhutan, we are not allowed, there was no clearances given for that coal production, because a charcoal production incurs or involves emission of a lot of gases. So that's why there's no clearances for this. But just across the border, there are factories producing that coal, and then by the transboundary nature of those emissions, we will end up having those emissions in our area as well. So that's why a poor country like Bhutan cannot bank on mitigating the after effects of those emissions. So we bank on not making it happen in the first hand, but when our such action is being nullified by the actions across other countries, I think we should be compensated for being focusing on the first hand, the beforehand actions. So my insistence is carbon trade-off should be implemented.
Is there one question more? There is just time for one more question. If there is no other question, then we come to sort of summarizing the session. We had 4 excellent presentations by the panelists, and I thank Mr. Wangdi, Dr. Gokhale, Dr. Shamin Reza, and Dr. Roy for giving us enough instigations to think what we can do as a region and what we can do even as an individual. It is important to have the whole issue of consumption and lifestyle as a regional agenda, or it's a global agenda really, and it has to be transformed into a regional agenda. And with that, what can be our individual agenda as well as what can be the agenda for the whole region. Let me say that it has been really thought-provoking and it has been an excellent session. I thank my four colleagues, and then this is the end of this session, but this is not the end of our action on climate change. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you to all the panelists and the chair for an excellent discussion on the imperatives and initiatives by the BIMSTEC countries on climate change. May I now request an ISCS official to please felicitate the chair with a memento. Thank you. May I now please request Professor Jayanto to please felicitate the rest of the speakers. Thank you, sir. This now brings us to an end of 4 very enriching and informative sessions of day 1 of this BIMSTEC conference. Please join us tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. For 3 sessions based on people-to-people connectivity, educational cooperation, and cultural and civilizational linkages. Finally, may I please request all the speakers and dignitaries present here to please stay back with us for a few minutes for a group photo on the stage. They will just clear the stage first. I also have 2 announcements for all our guests staying with us here at Taj. There are some tea, coffee, and some refreshments at the Palm Lounge for all the speakers here. And also, as part of the Earth Hour initiative, the guests may face a slight inconvenience as most of the electricity and electronical appliances will not work from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. tonight. It's as part of the Earth Hour initiative. You may please gather at the lobby during that time for some floral arrangements and for some refreshments, if you may please. Thank you. May I please request all the speakers to join us on the stage for a group photo, please.